How the brain stores memory. We'll understand different categories of memories and how they are stored very differently in the brain. So let's get in and understand the concept of memory and how the brain organizes memory inside. Whenever we think of memory, immediately we go back to our school days where we tend to remember things so that we can reproduce in examination. And very typically, if you remember the scene from the Three Idiots movie, the character of Chatur, we used to remember all those things mugging up, and in school days, we would call those kind of people as Rattu Popat. As a screw in its nut or lever arranged to turn a. Typically, the one who mugs up things like a parrot but doesn't understand much about them. So there is a category of memory which just mugs up things, and there is not much of understanding into that. So the memory of mugging up things to the extent that we need not even think about them comes under a category known as the procedural memory. Means you remember, but the moment it is asked, you speak without even knowing about what you are speaking. Many times, if you have noticed, you ask someone, "How are you?" And the instant replies, "I'm fine." Maybe the person is not at all fine, maybe going through a trauma or difficulty, or somebody has in the family is in trouble, but still, natural response is, "I'm fine," because there is spontaneity involved in it. There is a stimulus, and the response comes directly without a thought. So that's very unconscious in nature, which is known as the procedural memory. Because of multiple repetitions, these kind of memories are stored not just in the brain, and probably at the cellular level, so they are instantaneously being reproduced. We memorize writing, walking. Those things are instantaneously recalled. If I want to lift my hand, my muscle memory is there, which enables certain things so that my hand is lifted. Few of the brain regions are responsible for them, or they mediate such kind of memory, are typically the cerebellum. If you remember, we talked about the cerebellum briefly though in our brain structure video, where in the cerebellum the procedural memories are organized. One more part known as the basal ganglia also stores a lot of such kind of memories. And these memories are organized in a very typical fashion. When we do something on a repetitive basis, as if every time we do that, kind of a photocopy or a copy of an email as it is sent to someone, every time we perform a task on a repetitive basis, a copy is sent to these areas, both to cerebellum and basal ganglia, where they are remembered to such extent that with an instant stimulus, they can be reproduced even without bringing in the cognitive aspects or the thought aspects. Even if you've not done it for ages, you can get back on the driving seat of a car and you can start driving. But beyond that, we have other memories. In 1972, one neuroscientist, Endel Tulving, so apart from procedural, the other memories he put into two different baskets. One was semantic memory. Loosely, we can understand as general knowledge. That means if you ask me what's the color of apple and what's the difference between apple and banana, immediately I can recall that they are fruits, one similarity, but at the same time, one is round and one is cylindrical in shape, having a different color, one is yellow, one is red. So there is a general knowledge associated with these terms and with these memories. These are known as semantic memories. Semantic means meaning, and Tolving actually took it from the linguists who would put semantics as part of the language skill. And semantic memory is processed on the left part of the temporal lobe and some part of the limbic system. There was a very interesting experiment that was done on the taxi drivers of London. London considered to be a very complex city, vast city with a lot many crossings and many lanes. So cab drivers, they have to undergo a very tough test to qualify to become a taxi driver in London. There was an experiment which was conducted by a neuroscientist, Eleanor Maguire. In fact, before conducting this, Maguire did a lot of study on animals, and she found some of the animals who have the smartness of hiding their food at some locations and then recalling them later on, they have a small part in their brain, the hippocampus, which is larger than similar kind of animal, similar size of animal or similar intelligent animals. So, based on this understanding, she thought that she would carry out an experiment on people who have the memory of map or spatial memory, understanding the environment better. She then chose the London taxi drivers as subjects. Subjects are the one on whom the experiments are conducted. So she took a large group of people. 79 of them were interns who were trying to qualify the examination of becoming a taxi driver, and others were normal people of similar intelligence and similar education level. And she conducted this for a very long period of almost 4 years. So she measured the size of the hippocampus, which is supposed to help formation of memory before the start of the experiment and then after the completion of the experiment, which took almost 4 years. And astonishingly, what they found out is the hippocampus size has grown significantly in the people who were cab drivers. So this suggests two very incredible things. One, hippocampus definitely helps creating long-term memory, especially the semantic memory. And the second thing is something we all need to think about, that our mind has the potential, the power to change the structure of the brain. Because the cab drivers were using the memory and their mind more for understanding the lanes and the crossings and different addresses, maps of the streets, they used it so much that those parts, they started gathering more mass, more neurons, more connections. So this is what scientists term as neuroplasticity. If you like the discussions, if you like this kind of inputs about mind and brain, do subscribe to the channel because we are going to get a lot of these inputs in upcoming time. And coming back to our memory story, so semantic memory is not stored exactly, but definitely is mediated by the hippocampus. And also, it's been seen semantic memory is largely stored in a distributed manner on the left side of our brain, typically the temporal lobe, where meanings are associated. If you recall, we discussed about a part called the Wernicke's area when we discussed about the brain structure. That Wernicke's area is a part where we understand the meaning of words and sentences. So that part is also very much included when we are recalling semantic memory or storing semantic memory or memory which are more of general knowledge. So that's one part of the memory system which we store in our brain. The third kind of memory, which is probably the most important part, and most likely this is only and only available for the human beings. Other species may have it, but to a very little extent. What is this? This is known as episodic memory. Episodic memory is we remember episodes. As we know in television shows, we have episodes. So remembering episodes of our life is what is known as episodic memory. Like maybe my first day in school, or the first time I remember my birthday being celebrated, or I had been to some distant place, maybe a foreign land, first time, first day with my life partner, or there was an embarrassing incident that happened in my school. Maybe sometime we had some fight with someone which we still remember. Somebody cheated. So many episodes of life are understood, recalled, remembered, meaning taken from there, and those are stored in our long-term memory system. This is so important because this gives us the sense of identity, sense of a biography. I have an autobiographic memory. That means I know my life in sequence of events or sequence of episodes. So that's the reason they call it episodic memory. Not just we take or filter out information from there, We remember them as events and significant events in our life. Now, here we will understand that why this is important. If the parts which are involved in creating episodic memory are damaged, what would happen? If you recall some of the Bollywood stories where the hero or the main character in a movie who met with an accident and suddenly he lost all the memories. She doesn't even remember where she is or what is happening, who are the people around. A typical memory disorder known as retrograde amnesia. That means because of an accident, the person has completely wiped out the memory before that accident. Although she may be fairly intelligent, remembering the meanings but not remembering the episodes. That means she would be able to speak. So, language she remembers. She would be able to distinguish between banana and apple, but not events. So, completely forgetting about events that happened before. This is known as retrograde amnesia, where the person has forgotten about the past events. There is another interesting syndrome. It's a very painful syndrome, though, but this also gives us a lot of understanding about memory formation. It's known as anterograde amnesia, kind of little different from retrograde, where the hippocampus is affected. The hippocampus, which is one of the organs in our limbic system, which helps in forming memory, is damaged because of some reason, because of aging process. So new memories are not formed. So what happens? Past memories are intact. Anterograde amnesia has been very well depicted in the movie Gajni, which is a very famous and popular Bollywood movie, wherein the protagonist who loses memory and is unable to form new memory, and he wants to avenge the murder of his beloved. To get that done, he is trying few many things like notes, photographs, tattoos on his body. So the long-term memory system is affected in the anterograde amnesia, but the short-term or the what we term as the working memory, like let me give example of short-term. You have just received an OTP on your mobile phone, maybe to make a transaction on your bank account. So you remember that 6 or 8 digit number and instantly you can hold it for maybe few seconds or few minutes. So this is held for a very short time in your mind and then it got vanished. So that is a short term memory, but it did not get converted to the long term memory mechanism. The working memory is very different from the long term memory process. Many of the parts, especially in the prefrontal lobe area, are activated, work with the present moment inputs, and form a very short term memory which enables us to take charge of the immediate environment in the immediate time period. In the long term memory mechanism, typically two things are very strongly associated. One, the fact aspect, which are organized through the organ known as hippocampus, about which we have talked enough. Whereas procedural memory and semantic memories are also seen in other animals, episodic memory is very much human because we remember our past events, past situations, past episodes, and in a sequence, which help us, giving us a sense of identity, creating a kind of autobiography for ourselves. Episodic memories, definitely we have emotional involvement engagement. That's the reason why we can recall our life events which are emotionally significant. And if you want to know more about the emotional aspects, please do check out this video where you'll understand how emotions are processed in our brain.